Hello, everyone. All right, how did everybody do with their sessions this morning? Good, good. Hope you're having some good conversation here. My name is Brendan McEnany. I'm the director for USGBC here in California. And along with our other staff in San Francisco, in Orange County, our partners here locally with USGBC Los Angeles and San Diego, our dozens of dedicated all-star volunteers, we are part of a team working to implement USGBC's vision throughout the Pacific region. We educate the industry on how and why to deliver sustainability in the places where we live, learn, and work. We advocate for sustainable public policies that create healthy, thriving, efficient communities. And we drive market transformation toward our vision of green buildings for all. Across the country, our local staff and volunteers are working to grow markets. The market of green building professionals, the market for leadership through certifications, but also to grow our engagement with underserved communities. You all heard this morning from Kimberly with our 20% growth goals, and every time I hear that for my market, that number goes higher and higher. I think it was up to 90% last time, Kimberly. Yeah, exactly. So this is one of the reasons that this summit is so important. We're striving to work more with affordable housing providers, with schools, with community and faith-based organizations, and many others to ensure that green buildings for all really means for all. And so that the communities that face the most serious impacts of climate change, air pollution, environmental degradation, are front and center in our efforts to solve those problems in the built environment. I'm personally excited that Greenbuild is back here in LA. This is a city I fell in love with after living here for many years, but it also strikes me that it's a great place to talk about some of the lenses we put out for the day-to-day: resilience, health, social equity, and economic opportunity. On resilience, even as we applaud California's state, local, and private sector leadership on addressing greenhouse gas emissions, we know that the impacts are already here. As the poet said, water, water everywhere and not a drop to drink. The eastern U.S. has seen a 71% increase in extreme storm events, while California suffers through a massive and costly drought. Our wildfire season is longer and it's worse. Heat waves pose threats to vulnerable communities and cost the economy millions. Sea level rise threatens not just our coastal communities, but also the inland cities connected through waterways like Sacramento up north or Culver City here locally. On health, in Northern California, we created a building health initiative. We partner with Silicon Valley, with major healthcare providers, with manufacturers and designers to look at this question: how can buildings and communities be designed and built to not only avoid negative health impacts, but to improve health outcomes for the people that they serve? Our WELL standard has also brought a new tool to the table to help create healthy buildings. California has a strong culture of fitness, of health, of outdoor activity, but also very serious public health challenges, and these issues are very front of mind for us here. On social equity, in so many cities across the country, we find that low-income communities and communities of color disproportionately bear the brunt of pollution. In many ways, due to some of the factors we heard this morning from Dr. Fullilove, through structural racism, housing policies, and other issues that have caused this to be baked into our development patterns. People with lower capacity to deal with environmental burdens are facing more of them. We've seen that up in Oakland as residents fight to keep coal out of Oakland's ports. And we've seen it here locally in Wilmington with residents dealing with impacted air quality from the refineries. We see it in elevated asthma rates for communities near freeways. Now, certainly programs like LEAD try to address these issues at local and regional scales, but I think we also need to ask, at what point is affordability itself a sustainability issue? When my wife and I moved to the Bay Area last year, the median one-bedroom rent in San Francisco was approaching $4,000 a month. 7 of the 10 least affordable cities are here in California. Building sustainable, healthy, thriving communities will only work if they're accessible to people across all incomes. And lastly, economic opportunity. When we see California's climate policy leadership, we look at the state's economic growth combined with progressive environmental policies. We see the cost of solar dropping and coal companies going out of business. We see the rise of hybrids and electric vehicles. When you walk the expo floor out there, you see the explosion of products and services created to support the green economy. So how are we preparing for that transition to a clean energy economy, both now and for future generations? I hope you all got some great insights, obviously from Dr. Fullalove's talk this morning, but also for your breakout sessions. For our lunchtime program here, we have two special guest speakers, and they're absolute rock stars who are prime examples of California's leadership on some of these issues, both from the public sector, but also from private nonprofit world. After we hear from them, we'll have a networking lunch. Your tables are arranged by geographic area. You'll see the table placards so you can foster some conversations regionally, and we've provided some discussion topics to help seed your conversation. We're hoping that you can bring some regional context to each of the topics, foster some ideas and potential partnerships that can take root back home. So to start our program, it's my privilege to introduce Vien Trong, Director of Green for All. Green for All works to build an inclusive green economy strong enough to lift people out of poverty and to make sure people of color have a place and a voice in the climate movement. USGBC is a proud partner of Green for All on Green the Church and other initiatives. Vien previously led the Greenlining Institute's environmental equity team in creating solutions for poverty and pollution at the state legislature, California Public Utilities Commission, and in localities around the state. Under her leadership, her team created programs and policies around the country to direct billions of dollars to vulnerable communities. And here in California, we have a cap and trade program where Vien's fought to direct 25%, now 35%, if I recall from our conversation, of that money towards the communities that need it the most. She also co-led the Charge Ahead initiative to accelerate the transformation to electric vehicles and create clean transportation choices for low-income and working families. Both of those efforts were enacted into legislation by Senator De Leon, who will join us in a bit. Vien was instrumental in creating the California Climate Credit, which develops strong workforce standards for the energy efficiency sector and creates sustainable communities throughout California. I also just learned that she turned down the White House and her award of a climate champion to be here today and join us. Yeah. So even while leading efforts across the state and the nation, Vien has served on the Oakland Planning Commission and continues to be a treasure and a light in her hometown community. Since I grew up in New Hampshire, here's where I would usually say I am wicked psyched. But since my family is now putting down roots in Oakland, I think I can start to say I'm hella stoked to welcome Vien Trong.
What up? This is Ludacris.
Yo, what up? It's your boy Wiz Khalifa, man. What's going on? This is Drake.
It's Anthony Mackie. We out here in West Harlem.
Green for all, green the block. Why Clef say take action, don't stop, you dig?
If you want to see more jobs in the communities, make some noise. For everybody out here that understand the struggle in the ghetto, and you want to take it to a new level, we take it to a higher level. Green for all.
May not mean nothing to y'all, but understand nothing was done for me.
So I don't plan on stopping at all. I said up.
Everywhere you turn, pollution and poverty are hurting our neighborhoods.
Communities where we come from, those are the most polluted areas.
Access to fresh water is an issue that affects 1 in 3 people. At least 14 states in the U.S. are currently experiencing crisis-level water shortages and contamination.
But we can change that, and going green is the solution.
Can't just wait for Obama to do things. We should take the effort to assist.
It's not green for some, it's green for all.
Let's all do our part to educate and empower more young people about the promises of a green economy.
Learn how to get involved and plant your own garden.
Go green, keep it clean in the hood. Trust me, it works.
If you want to get in tune with the green movement and see how it can benefit your hood, check out greenforall.org.
Hey y'all, all for green? Yes, all for green? Yes. The funny thing about that video, I was showing it a few weeks ago to a room full of environmental state legislators who were maybe on average 50 and above years old. And I looked around, I was like, if you don't know who anybody on the screen was, ask somebody who's in their 30s. That they were pretty awesome. So I'm so pleased to be here, and it is true, I came here instead of going to the White House who, because they were doing South by South Lawn and they were having a lot of fun and parties. But for me, this is a more important conversation. And you are more important than what happens now in DC. Because if we're really going to see the change that we need in this country, it's going to be about what you guys are going to do. It's going to be the conversations that you're going to have at the kitchen tables. It's going to be the conversations you have with your friends and neighbors. And it's going to be what you do with your programs and the way that you're going to vote. I hope you're going to vote. And it's about what you'll be taking out of this room. So it is my honor and deep pleasure to be here today. And I'm here today. I'm going to get really personal today. Is that okay? Y'all got my back? And the reason why is because I have learned a lot in this past year leading Green for All, and I want to share some of those lessons. And the only way I can do that is if I get personal. And the first thing I have to do is have a confession. So a few years ago, I did something that I'm not particularly proud of. In the indiscretions of youth, I made a decision that changed the course of my life. And I'm going to confess that a few years ago, I decided to go to law school. And law school was this weird place that brainwashed me into believing that to succeed in your work and in your life, you have to lead with your intellect, to think critically, to analyze everything thoroughly, 6 questions deep. And along this path, I forgot that more than anything, we need to lead with our hearts and with love. And today, I'm going to tell you a few stories of how I learned those lessons, really, in some ways, the hard way. And so the first thing I have to do, if I'm going to get personal, is to tell you about my family. This is them, my mom and dad in the middle, 9 kids around them. My family left Vietnam in the late 70s as part of the boat migration. We were a refugee family. I was in the belly in the picture. You can't see me, but I'm there. And we had to leave a country that was seared, bombed, carpet bombed. And my mom packed all the stuff that she had to get into a boat. And she had to row 500 miles away, not only with the 9 kids and my dad, but an 80-year-old grandma, across treacherous waters to try to get to Macau. And these waters had actually claimed the lives of many of her friends and families previously. And she had to do that to try to get us to a better future, a better life, right? To get us to safety. When we finally got to the US, we ended up being in Oregon, where we were migrant farm workers, picking strawberries and snow peas. It's what we did. Sometimes I was strapped on the back. When we finally graduated from working on the fields, we went to Oakland, California, where I still live today, and we worked in sweatshops from the time I was 3 and to the time I was in high school. It's what we did. It's what I did for a long time. The seams, the ironing, the cutting, that's what I did for many, many years. And so today I'm here because I have this experience of leading a national organization, but for me it comes down to the end of the day being the daughter of refugees, being a mother in Oakland, California, in a community that has 1 in 4 people with asthma because we live between 2 freeways and within breathing distance of an airport. And struggling between the national picture and what's happening very locally is what I contend with on a daily basis. So I want to tell you what I have learned, which is first, I think that we have forgotten something deep in this country. As environmentalists, we forgot about what it means to be an ecosystem. And the irony is that we understand ecosystem in the natural world. We understand what happens to the bees affects the plants, affects our air, it affects us. But we have forgotten somehow that what happens in low-income communities and in communities in Appalachia and in communities in East Oakland and in communities in Wilmington and in communities across this country affects us. Even if we've never seen them, even if we have never met them, it affects us. And that came home to me in such a big way when I heard about the story in Flint. So for me, I was driving home in my car, husband, twins, listening to NPR like a good progressive, and the story of Flint began unfolding on the radio. I couldn't believe it was actually true. You know that story when aliens come home, like that attack thing? It was kind of like in that surreal moment, because I was hearing about all the kids in Flint had gotten lead poisoned, all 10,000. I had heard about 4,000 undocumented people in Flint who couldn't go to the hospital because they had no health care. I heard about Flint. The cost of replacing these pipes cost more than the value of their homes themselves. And these homes were the result of decades, of generations of investments, of saving in order to buy a house that they could leave to their kids, and now it's worth nothing. And I heard about all of this happening for years and nobody paying attention. I fell to my knees. I couldn't believe. I mean, my tears I told my kids that I wasn't really crying. My eyes were just sweaty, but, they were tears. And I didn't know what to do except to pick up the phone and call people that I knew in Michigan and ask, what can Green for All do? And we're not a huge organization, but we have something that we can do, I'm sure. And the reason why it's important to pick up the phone and call is to ask what they want you to do, not what you think they should do, and what do you think they need, right? So in my mind, I call it out of true solidarity, out of true kind of how do we be there in suffering with the other person and truly extend a hand. What they told us was that already the national media was ignoring what was happening. Already there was a presidential candidate painted the color orange with weird hair who was taking over the airwaves and forgetting about what was happening in Flint. And what they wanted more than anything was for people to listen to their stories and to care, like really care. And I said, we got that. And in the span of 12 days, we brought together a national bus tour. Partners packed the bus, national media outlets, we packed everybody on the bus. In 12 days, flew everybody out there. And we did not only one, but 2 press conferences. I want to share with you the stories because I don't want them to ever be forgotten. Nakia Wakes, a mother who was pregnant with twins. And as a mom with twins, I personally really identified with her because we are like a tribe, right? Like we go to war together. And I remember so clearly the overwhelming joy that I felt when I heard that I had twins. She found out she had a miscarriage days before she received notice that pregnant women shouldn't be drinking the water because there's lead in there. And this is the first time she's ever been told after she had lost her babies. Denitra Brown, whose 3-year-old stopped breathing 83 times an hour after she put him in a bathtub. She had put him in the bathtub, and just a few minutes later, he started screaming and crying. She picked him up, and it turns out that the water had burned him, causing cracks in his stomach. He was bleeding. Rushed him to the hospital in intensive care, stopped breathing 83 times an hour. They were measuring it. So now she has to open all those bottles of water you see on the table. She has to open bottles after bottles of water. It takes her 4 hours to make one bath, heating it up, cooling it down, bucket after bucket. And she's a single mom. We heard from Wani Olivares, who you see here, Latina, second from the right. She's a Flint resident, organizer, one of those people who will always have your back, who will always show up if you ever need anything. She's that woman. And even when we met her, she was like rushing to get deliveries of fresh water out to families who were too scared to be deported to go to pick up fresh water. And she was doing this in the goodness of her heart as a volunteer. And she was saying that people were buying their own water at Walmart because they had to buy literally truckloads of water to sustain for a week. And they couldn't even afford that, but they were scared of being deported. And they didn't even know that they couldn't drink the water for such a long time because nobody translated the information in Spanish. And when they did bring a translator, they were speaking Castilian, which is not the language they were speaking. And so she was doing all this, and she started sobbing when she was telling us the story because she had just met this little girl who had 10 times the lead poison in her body as was safe for an adult. But the thing is, she can't go to the hospital. She can only go to the clinic and only 3 times a year because they were undocumented, and that's what they were allowed. I'm getting choked up telling y'all, I'm going to get personal. Y'all got my back, right? Y'all still have my back? Thank you. Harold Harrington, who you see back there in the trench coat, Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Union, good guy, salt of the earth kind of guy. He organized crews of men to go install filters to homes, making sure that people had at least a little bit of clean water if they were running it on cold, training folks, doing all the right things. He got his own water tested in his house. The authorities told him it was fine, he can use the water. His wife was lead poisoned 18 months later. Turned out they had lied about the test results. And so we wanted to get their stories out, and we created a video sharing a little bit of what they did.
I'm glad to be alive because I almost lost my life. I heard about 6 others that did lose their life.
Nobody cares because it's poor African Americans.
The people of Flint were poisoned. The basic human right of clean water denied. For nearly 2 years, residents of Flint have been told their lives don't matter.
People want clean, safe water.
It's like you don't even count.
The Flint water crisis is the worst environmental racism case we have ever seen. People in Flint were not respected as full human beings, that their lives did not fully matter.
And it's just a travesty. The governor let them down, and now it'd be a shame if the federal government let them down the same way.
If ISIS or jihadists came up with a strategy to poison 10,000 American children, what would happen?
Congress would act within 24 hours.
This is an internal email within the EPA, but I'm not so sure Flint is the community we want to go out on a limb for. Of all the communities out there, Flint is the #1 place that they should have been going out on a limb for.
People who put dollars over the fundamental safety of the people do not belong in government, and you need to resign, Governor Snyder.
Flint, a city surrounded by some of the largest freshwater lakes in the world, was now delivering
tap water contaminated with lead.
Flint's water has been poisoned with lead.
Lead.
Everyone's talking about lead as well. They should be. But it is actually more dangerous to bathe in chloroform than lead.
You have chloroform that people are taking into their bodies every time they bathe.
And this 2-year-old little boy is also not shy about showing you the rash that is all over his body. It's on his legs, arms, and face.
You see the agencies showing up, and they'll test one sink, and they'll test it for copper or lead. You can't find what you don't look for.
City, state, and EPA officials are ignoring the dozens of harmful toxins in the water reaching Flint's homes. Toxins that don't just enter the body from drinking the water, but are also ingested from breathing them in or through the skin, with devastating effects. State officials are still telling residents it's safe to bathe or shower in the water.
In 62 contamination events in 5 years, never seen chemicals in bathtubs like this, ever.
People are still getting exposed because they're still not being protected by their state government. Some people still don't know there's a problem.
When I came to, that's all I know is that they told me it was Legionnaires. We didn't even, to me, my understanding was, I didn't know the water was messed up.
We're still being served up poison water at the highest rates. We're still sick. We are not getting the help that we need. But everything that has happened has come through the force and change caused by citizens.
When the federal funds are coming in, ideally local people get the jobs so that we're both addressing the issue of unemployment and making sure that the money is coming back to supporting the rebuild. Green for Us here because we are in solidarity with residents here in Flint, and we wanted to make sure that we're bringing national attention and really handing the microphone to Flint residents and letting them tell us what's really happening.
But what has happened to our community has not broken us. It's brought us together. I'll continue to stand up and call for action from Governor Snyder and our elected officials.
At the end of the day, they can look at us instead of saying, oh, those poor people, go, oh, look at those poor people. They got poisoned and they stood up and they made a difference.
Hopefully it'll build itself back up. And I'll be a part of it. While it's building up, I'm building up too. Because I'm never going to give up on Flint.
Join with Flint Rising to call on Governor Snyder to fix Flint and make polluters pay.
It was a huge blessing that when in times of need and you call on your friends to see if they're going to be there with you to show for others and they show up, it's a telling sign of who people are and their characters. And so to have Van Jones and Mark Ruffalo and Tom Steyer come with us to Flint and to support Flint residents was a huge, huge ray of hope for me, but maybe not as much as these men in Oregon State Penitentiary. They were a reminder that no matter who you are, where you are, you can actually do a lot. These men had heard about what was happening in Flint on TV. And while a lot of people would change the channel or not care and say, well, we're in prison, what can we do? They actually said, let's pass around a collection plate. So they started raising money in prison, raised $1, $5 increments, and they raised a total of $800. Now, I know it doesn't sound like much, but on average, these men make about $49 a month. So they were putting aside 5 to 10% of their incomes. And this was money that they had to rely on for their personal hygiene, for their food. This was their discretionary money. And they were obligated to oftentimes to family and kids even outside of prison. So the fact that they were donating this amount of money to people they had never met, they knew so deeply the importance of compassion and understanding our ecosystem. And for me, this was such a sign of hope. And I thought about, can you imagine donating 5 to 10% of your income, even for a month? Can you imagine doing that? Like not a tax write-off reason, like just doing it out of the goodness of heart? And what if we all did that, right? Wouldn't that be incredible? And the thing is, this story for me was at first a beacon of hope, but also a bit of outrage. Because I thought, well, this is an indictment of the power that was in Michigan. There was a governor, Snyder, who was elected to protect the people of Flint, and he threw them in the way of getting poisoned and losing lives. And these men were donating so much of their money, and it's not a sustainable solution. I mean, we can't just rely on men donating, where they have no money. How do we actually create long-term sustainable change? And so that's what I began working on when I came home from Flint, and remembering the stories of what was happening there. I actually came home, and all of our staff that went, including a lot of the leaders who you saw on the bus, confessed afterwards that we went home and cried. Not like the nice, a tear came out. Like we did the ugly sob cry. And because you couldn't, even today, I mean, my staff was, like, in her off time, she did a Kickstarter for one of the moms that you saw in the video, because our hearts are still in Flint. And it's not sustainable. We can't do Kickstarters. We can't have $49 donations or $5 donations. It's just not sustainable. So what is the systematic solution that we need to have? And so that's important to remember, because New Orleans, Appalachias, East LA, Wilmington, they're all going through, in many ways, what's happening in Flint. Long-term neglect, disinvestment, a need for jobs, long-term prioritizing over profiteers, over the people who actually live in the very communities, who rely on the infrastructure, who rely on our government to do better. And so I stepped back and said, what we need to do is go back to the old adage that if you break it, you fix it. And we got to put people first. And so we made a call that polluters should pay. Because families shouldn't. It shouldn't be on our backs. Polluters need to be accountable. And when we sent out this beacon to our networks and to our allies and to our friends and said, are you with us? Will you join us? They said, thank you. And they did it in a resounding way. I was really pleased with it. We had a bunch of celebs who did Instagrams and Twitter and Facebook. Oh my gosh, I'm getting old. I didn't remember those social media outlets. And not only did they do it, so we had Russell Simmons and Rosario Dawson, who you see there, and Michael Skonek and Lance Bass from the Backstreet Boys, bunch of awesome people. And it was echoed around the globe, internationally. The call for polluters pay was everywhere around this country, and even echoed in Europe and in Africa and Asia, and it continued to trend on Twitter for hours and hours and hours. Because what they knew was that we needed more. And we needed to make sure that we were actually demanding more investments and more accountability. And that idea is based on a very tried and true model that was created, in fact, by a hometown hero here in LA, Senator De Leon, who I'm so pleased to share the stage with today. Under Senator De Leon's leadership, he actually created a fund that required first 25%, but now 35% of the Polluters Pay Fund in California to be invested in low-income communities. Let me go a little off script and talk about why that's so amazing. In California, there's this program called Polluters Pay, cap and trade. It makes polluters pay, and that money goes into a fund. A lot of people would say, done, deal. But Senator De Leon said, no, that money isn't the end-all, be-all, because the people who need that money most are the people in the most impoverished communities. So let's direct the funding there. And that law, 535, created the biggest fund in history for low-income communities. And did not stop there. A lot of legislators would actually say, pass the law, done, I don't even need to walk the halls anymore. He actually did walk the halls and meet with staffers at like junior associate levels to talk about the importance of this bill. And afterwards, we went back to the very communities across California and said, this is your money, because you paid for it in your health and in your lives. You've paid for it in your community and in your family. Where do you want the money to actually go to? And everything the community members told us after a year of church meetings and town halls and workshops and webinars and phone conferences, I know you guys have been there. They told us these lists of programs and everything the community members asked for, we got. We got free solar panels by the thousands, free energy efficiency upgrades, free public transportation, free bus passes for seniors and students, affordable housing by transit-oriented development, the largest urban forestry fund in the United States, even outpacing the federal fund. There was van pools for migrant farm workers. There was so many programs, and here's why it's important. I talked about some of the scary stories. Here's the beautiful story that keeps me up and reminds me of the goodness in the world. There's a woman named Maria Zavala. She lives in Fresno, which is the worst air quality in the country, and among the poorest in the country as well. Maria Zavala had heard about this program for free solar panels. Her husband had just died from cancer, and she was trying to raise a teenage son who was in and out of trouble. She applied for this program, got a free solar panel. We went out to meet her and saw those free solar panels on her rooftop, and she was telling us in the process that her electricity bill was $200 on average a month. Because in Fresno, it gets really hot in the summers and really cold in the winters, and she had to crank up the heater and the AC during those times. $200 on average a month. After she got the free solar panels on her rooftop, it dropped to $1.50 a month. Right? Now, in the first year alone, there were 1,800 free solar panels in California. By the time we get to 2020, the state projects that this fund alone will be somewhere between $4 billion and $12 billion worth of funds, just for the poorest and most polluted census tracts in California. That's huge. That's a game changer, because when you think about it, not only did Maria save $200 a month, but somebody got a job putting the solar panels on her rooftop, somebody got a contract putting the solar panels in the community, and the power plant down the way is cranking out less dirty energy now for the people who live around that community, but also for all of us, right? Now imagine when that gets replicated nationally. That's what we're doing. President Obama's Clean Power Plan, which I know a lot of you guys are already familiar with, because I asked Kimberly earlier, and she said, you guys, yeah, a lot of you are already working around the country doing work around the CPP. Here's the thing. A lot of states will be creating essentially a cap-and-trade program. And the problem is, not many people are in the conversation thinking about how to do it best, how to really invest wisely in low-income communities and communities of color, how to make sure that when they talk about allowance value and dividends and revenues and whether or not to do mass-based versus rate-based, don't glaze your eyes. Stay there. Stay awake, because that's money, right? They code it, and I'm a lawyer. I understand. We try to make our hourly wage, but stay there. Don't be intimidated. Stay in the conversation. And if you need help, a group of us, Green for All, convened the best of in the country to create a toolkit on how to advocate for the best options for equity in the Clean Power Plan. The website you see in the bottom corner there, it's all open source. It's all created by the best minds in this country, and it's highlighting the best solutions we have seen in this country around equity and justice. And it's all viable within the CPP. We've vetted it with a number of lawyers, trust me. And it's all stuff that people around the country can be advocating for. As the person who's been doing this work for over a decade, I know how hard it is doing the research to try to figure out what's the most cutting edge thing, what's the best solution. It's all there. It's for you. You're welcome. Thank you. And finally, I want to just share one of the things I'm so thankful and excited about. Thanks to the leadership of Kimberly Lewis and Ryan White, they reached out and we are working together on Green the Church. And Green the Church is about highlighting the important role that the African American community, and especially the faith leaders in the African American community, plays, not only in reminding us the importance of faith. We need to have faith to visualize a better future, and nobody does it better than the Black church, let me tell you. And we need to remind ourselves of the importance that low-income communities and communities of color play if we're going to really have sustainable communities. So with our partnership, we have been working across the country and working to spread green theology and greening up churches and really to make sure that the congregation is educated about the options that USGBC and other players can play in helping to green up low-income communities and communities of color. And join us. We're going to be in Baltimore at the end of this month. We're going to hang out, have some fun. There'll be good people there. It's always fun and lively. And if you need a little faith and hope in your life, this will give you life. It will. It's amazing. So finally, I will end where I began, with my mom, with the boat. My mom used to say when she was leaving Vietnam that she had put everything that she had in that boat. And when she was telling me the story, she would always, talk about, like the whole, I sacrificed so much for you. And you don't even understand what I gave up for you. And, anybody else ever hear that from their parents? Yeah, y'all know. I heard that knowing laugh. And for a long time, I was just like, I know, Mom. I heard the stories. And with the snow in Vietnam, did you walk like 10 miles in the snow? But you know what? Now that I'm a mom, I get it. And now that I'm an environmentalist, I get it even more. Because the thing is, we are all sacrificing in so many ways to give to the next 7 generations, right? We're trying to sacrifice our time and our efforts to build a more sustainable society. And in this last year, what I have learned is that it's not enough for us to focus on the solar panels. It's not even enough for us to think about how to green up buildings. It's not enough for us to just think about how to clean up the air and build transportation and the infrastructure. It's not enough. Because if we're really thinking about what kind of world we're going to leave our kids, we have to think about how we're working with each other and to work with each other in real community. Because what we're seeing around the country now, let me tell you, I go to places like the Dakotas, to Utah, to Kentucky, to Tennessee, to all of these places, and the country is just torn apart. They're torn apart. People are refusing to listen to you because of the way you show up. And I think we have to get deeper than a solar panel. So that may sound scary in some ways, but I think climate change isn't just a disaster. It is a real opportunity and hope for us to begin reimagining and redesigning what this country looks like. And there's possibility there. There's a possibility for us to do something better, to leave our kids with a better future. That's why I'm here at USGBC. And that's where I was so humbled and honored to be here with Kimberly and with Ryan, and thank you to Barbara Schwinger for making just everything so smoothly. The reason I'm here, because you're literally building a better future for our kids. And what you do tomorrow, what you do when you leave this room, the kitchen conversations that you're going to have, what you're going to talk to your kids about, what you're going to talk to your neighbors about, that is where change is going to happen. You're way better than Leonardo DiCaprio. And I will leave by saying that you're not alone. I'm here. Really. Reach out. Let me know if there's any way I can be a support to you, if there's any way I can help you, if there's any way that Green for All can help you. We're here. We're in solidarity. We got your back, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Vienne. Note to self, never follow Vienne. When I saw the speaker lineup for the summit lunch today, I felt a personal connection. Vienne and Green for All do such great work in Oakland, where I now call home. Later, we'll hear from Senator Kevin De Leon, whose district is right here in Los Angeles, where I spent many years. And in between, I lived in DC, where I first met our next speaker, Krisa Pagitsis. Krisa leads Fannie Mae's multifamily green finance business, which transforms the U.S.'s multifamily housing stock through green financing for energy and water efficiency improvements and green buildings. Under her leadership, the Fannie Mae multifamily mortgage business has originated over $1.7 billion in green mortgage-backed securities. She serves on USGBC's board of directors and is a passionate advocate for sustainability. Here to introduce our luncheon keynote, please join me in welcoming Krisa Pagitsis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, I will say that if you hear me a little bit struggling with words, it's because Vienne did move me. As a mother, as an advocate in this industry, what happened in Flint does affect all of us because Flint is not an isolated incident, unfortunately. So there is a call to action that Vienne put out, which is that each one of you can make a difference, and each one of you can make greener housing and communities for all. So I actually am going to engage with you in my short speech, but I am here for you as well to engage on how Fannie Mae, in its single-family and multifamily business, can be your partner in greening communities and housing for all. So if you'll forgive me, I'm going to need a moment. But the reason I was asked here today is also to thank you for being here, not only in the Flint conversation, in the Green for All conversation, but in this summit itself. And there's a particular group that I would like to thank on behalf of the board of directors, which is the advisory group. This group of dedicated professionals, volunteers, leaders are the reasons why the speakers are here today to bring to you the topics that we care about. So I'd actually like to take a moment and thank the advisory group. Please give them a round of applause. I can say that as a former advisory group member myself, it takes a lot of thought to bring this panel together. And over the years, I've seen a number of themes touched upon. I've seen affordable housing and how do you get to net zero. I've seen topics covering how do you bring transportation to the communities that need it most, and how do you actually engage with residents and homeowners on the benefits of greening their homes when there's so many other pressing things on their minds, such as education, such as the health of their families, and access to jobs. But that is where you come into play. Behind each one of those topics, there are barriers. There are issues that have to be tackled, and it's those conversations that get into the details, get into the trenches, those barriers that you're tearing down brick by brick, topic by topic, memo by memo, PowerPoint by PowerPoint, that make a difference. You are tackling the barriers that affect homes. Some may argue that schools are optional. Some may argue that offices, hospitals, in theory, optional. Homes are not optional. So it is by tearing down those barriers that we are creating, to use Vienne's words, creating a new ecology, an ecology of businesses and people and processes and relationships. Those are the barriers that we're breaking down and the new ecology that we're building together. So I'd like to spend just a few minutes telling you about the barriers at Fannie Mae that we're removing so that you and others can retrofit multifamily housing to green standards to make them healthier for everybody who goes home at night and puts their head on a pillow. And for those of you who work with the homeless populations, for those of you that work with at-risk families, how do we give green housing for all? Fannie Mae is a secondary mortgage lender. Not very interesting, perhaps, not very sexy, maybe seemingly not even direct in the conversation around green financing. But what we do is we create programs, we create structures, and we create ways to incentivize greening of housing and breaking down issues that are faced by the multifamily industry. Since starting the green financing business, first as a green initiative in 2010, I have seen Fannie Mae take concrete action. We partner with the EPA and developed the U.S.'s Energy Star score for existing multifamily. It didn't exist because there's nobody out there who has a national presence and can collect data from over 1,000 multifamilies nationwide. We committed to it, we put money behind it, we spent time, and we delivered that data to the EPA, and they delivered an Energy Star score. So multifamily owners can start seeing energy performance over time. Now the EPA is preparing the nation's first ever for any real estate asset WaterSense score. That is huge to be able to count and see the impact of energy and water efficiency. Financing, the money. It's important. Multifamily properties get debt. How do they do it? They work with a network of lenders. And since 2015, we have actually offered lower interest rate on properties that retrofit or properties that have a green building certification, such as Energy Star, LEED, and a host of other ones. A lower interest rate rewarding properties for making retrofits, all combined into their traditional mortgage. We were the first to do that, and now others are following our lead. What I'd like to do, though, is tell you about the new barriers that we're breaking out, and there are 3 exciting ones related to our Green Rewards loan product. And they're significant because money matters when it comes to incentivizing owners to make improvements. First, Fannie Mae is paying 100% of the cost of an energy audit. That's the ASHRAE Level 2 report that finds those critical energy and water efficiency opportunities, whether it's $6,000, $10,000, $20,000. Fannie Mae will pay 100% of it if that loan goes forward as a Green Rewards loan. That's important for our affordable housing across the United States. Second, bigger loans. Bigger loans are a result of us allowing underwriting of 75% of the owner's projected cost savings. That is an amazing incentive, and it gives dollars to the owner to retrofit the property. 3, we've working and we have a solution to overcome the split incentive. Now, Green Rewards deals can actually underwrite 25% of tenants' cost savings. And that's the one I intentionally am leaving you with, because tenant savings, underwriting, whose eyes have glazed over? Yes? Okay, yes. I'm a finance professional. But underwriting, tenant savings is key because it gives the owner credit for saving that the tenant is going to see on their PEPCO bill, on their Duke bill, on their PG&E bill. Why is that important? Because you're looking for the incentives that brings in the new ecology. It brings in all of the stakeholders, renters, owners, lenders, the bond market. So the third piece here is that we'll underwrite 25% of the tenant's cost savings into the owner's loan and getting over that dirty, dirty word, split incentive. These are the barriers that we're taking down. This is the new ecology that we're developing. What I'd like to do now is introduce you to someone who is no stranger to taking down barriers, Senator Kevin DeLeon. The senator represents District 24 and is Senate President Pro Tem for California. He is a tireless advocate for all of his constituents, and he has worked on a host of issues near to everyone's heart, such as access for better quality education, issues of equity for women, and challenges faced by immigrants and low-wage workers. However, Senator DeLeon has zeroed in on building a clean energy economy. We will be hearing about his formidable work in this area today, and I have no doubt that the barriers facing that vision are going to come down very quickly. Please join me in a warm welcome to Senator DeLeon.
Thank you so very much, Chris. It's indeed an honor and pleasure to be here with each and every one of you. Kimberly, I want to thank you very much. I know that you have tried for numerous years to get me here, and you finally got me here physically. So I'm honored to be here with all of you here today. And I just want to say very quickly to my good friend, to Bien, what a powerful story. What a human, powerful story. A young child coming here across the Pacific Ocean from Vietnam. We know the history of Vietnam and the U.S. involvement in Vietnam and refugee resettlement in various parts of the United States of America. But to have this young woman come to California, specifically Oakland, to go to law school and to actually be what I would consider one of the premier national civil rights and environmental justice lawyers in the nation, to advocate for all individuals, irrespective of the hue of their skin, is quite remarkable. And I just want to give it up for Bien, for your incredible story that you've shared with us. It's an honor to be here with each and every one of you. I do want to thank the U.S. Green Building Council for being such a driving force in our efforts to improve energy efficiency, resiliency, as well as indoor environmental health in our state and across the nation. Greening our built environment has been a focus of mine throughout my tenure as an elected official. It is grounded in my own personal experience growing up in a very poor community, both in Tijuana, Baja California. Many folks know it as TJ, but I grew up in Tijuana as well as Barrio Logan in San Diego, the youngest child of a single immigrant mother with a third grade education. And that being said, it helped inform my policy making in the state capitol. Because I grew up in an area there was a dearth of green parks and open space, obviously trees of any type to provide shade, and also to refinery plants, junkyards that were zoned in and around the community. And this is not a unique story, because this is a story of millions of Californians. This is a story of tens of millions of Americans throughout the great United States of America. But I am here to say very clearly, without any equivocation, that the state of California today is not a leader when it comes to the challenge of global climate change, but we are the leader when it comes to battling climate change and how we democratize our climate change benefits so all individuals, irrespective of who you are and where you come from, the hue of your skin, the language that you speak, or in fact, yes, your legal status. All individuals in California will in fact benefit from our climate change policies. This is not theoretical. This is not something at MIT or University of Chicago or Stanford or Harvard where you can be around a plenary session and theorize about it and present a white paper at a conference and talk about what is possible. This is something that we're doing here in California with a sense of intentionality and with purpose, because public policy making makes a major difference when you move it with political capital. You can improve the human lives and you can improve the human condition of all individuals. What we're doing in California, as you know, we have a market-based system with regards to carbon. Can be very controversial because some folks believe in a carbon tax, others believe in a cap-and-trade system where polluters pay. We have a system that's set up already. But as Bien mentioned, 25, now 35% of all auction revenues go to communities that are disproportionately impacted by both greenhouse gases, GHG, CO2, carbon, as well as other criteria pollutants that our children breathe into their lungs, whether it's black carbon, whether it's NOx or SOx or particulate matter 2.5. The number one reason for absenteeism in our public school system today is due to asthma. Now, think about this. If you're a single immigrant mother or a single mother, and you work across town taking care of the children of the wealthy and cleaning their homes, and your child has an attack of asthma, and she is in the emergency room, or you have to take her to the emergency room, that is a day of wages that are lost. A day of wages that are lost to pay to put the roof over your child's head, to put the food on the table, as well as put the clothes on their back. So climate change, and I'm really glad that VM put this in context, because I think for far too long, for many folks on both coasts, East Coast as well as the West Coast, they believe that the environment began and ended at the beach. That's not the case. There's a lot of other folks other than Bill McKibben, and Bill McKibben's a good friend. There's a lot of other folks other than Bill McKibben out there in the trenches who have not been heard from, or talked about when it comes to environmental justice movement. And the environmental justice movement is not just a neatly packaged, siloed sort of subset, if you will, of a larger environmental movement when it comes to climate change. In fact, I would argue and say some of the biggest profound movements in the world when it comes to climate change has been driven by people of color. Case in point, back in 2006 with AB 32, you had Assemblymember Fran Pavley, but you also had then Speaker Emeritus Fabian Nunez, who grew up in Tijuana and in San Diego, who grew up in the same barrio, Logan Heights. If it was not for Fabian Nunez, AB 32 would never have come to fruition. Why is AB 32 so important for our friends not from California? Because the Bush administration did not adhere to the Kyoto protocols in Japan. And there was a lot of just sullen, depressed folks throughout the world because the United States obviously is the 800-pound gorilla. So in California, when we move forward with AB 32, it's targeting 40% less production of CO2 from 1990 levels, it was a shot across the arm, in the arm that was heard across the world. When we went to a market-based mechanism in California, then we were in business. So we're beyond the theoretical. Now, how actually are we going to reduce carbon and measure it and quantify it and verify it? And how are we going to create a cap-and-trade system that is democratized so all individuals who are disproportionately impacted by the consequential effects of carbon, how will they actually benefit also too? As was mentioned a few moments ago, climate change is happening today, right now in real time, as we see, as we feel it, as we experience it. Whether it was on the East Coast because of Sandy, whether it was in New Orleans or right here in California because of the drought. We're in the 5th record year of a drought. So what happens when you have a drought in probably the most advanced agricultural business industry in the United States of America, where 50% of all goods in California are exported throughout the whole country? Fruits, vegetables, as well as nuts. Well, if you're a farm worker, you're out of a job, or you have less hours to work. And if you have less hours to work, that means you have not enough money in your pocket to pay for the rent and take care of your children. And if you don't have enough money to take care of your children, then what happens? The impacts are such that they go on social service programs. And collectively, we all pay for that. The wildfires in California are longer, they're more stubborn, they're fiercer, they're meaner. And it's costing us billions of dollars, not tens of millions, not hundreds of millions. It's costing us now billions of dollars to put these fires out or for necessary fire prevention. These are the total cost when it comes to pollution, whether it's public health outcomes or catastrophes like an ongoing 5th record year of a drought or these forest fires that have taken root in California. And other types of catastrophes are taking place throughout the United States of America. But how you democratize our climate change policies are absolutely critical for the entire nation. And that's why I'm happy to say that we lead the world. We lead the world, and today we are the 6th largest economy on planet Earth. I want to put this in context, because we're not the 6th largest economy in the United States of America. We're the 6th largest on planet Earth. And we just got off the worst economic recession since 1929 because of the housing crisis that took us down. Now, the largest economy is the United States of America, largest GDP in the aggregate as a whole. 2 is China, 3 is Japan, 4 is Germany, 5 is France, and number 6 is the Great Republic of California. And number 7, it's the United Kingdom, England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. As much as it's intact right now, God knows if it's going to break up again, even more so. At number 8, it is Brazil. Number 9, it is Russia. And number 10, it is Italy. Now, we are the 6th largest economy in the world, coming off the worst economic recession since 1929 because of the policies that we have moved forward with intentionality and purpose to send a clear market signal to investors, venture capital, as well as institutional investors, that we are in business here for clean energy technologies to be created here in California and exported throughout the country, as well as the world. We are not debating in California between evolution and creationism. We've gone beyond that. And we see a correlation with economic growth when you can decouple and delink carbon from GDP, which means we're 28% less carbon intensive in California, Yet our economy has grown, and you can actually verify it and measure the actual jobs created in the clean energy space. And guess what? Many of these jobs are going to those at the lowest economic strata, because we know that not everyone's going to get into Stanford University or University of California at Berkeley or UCLA or USC or San Diego State University. A lot of folks will go on to a community college, a job that's created on site like energy efficiency, whether it's lights, sensors, double pane windows, window fenestration, insulation. These are jobs that are labor intensive, and jobs must be done on site. They can't be exported elsewhere or offshored to Guangzhou, China. They must be done by human labor in the state, in the city, in your local region. But when you move the policies and bring the capital to bring about these jobs, the benefits are incredible. One is you actually created a job that otherwise didn't exist. Two, you help reduce carbon emissions. Three, insular, within your classroom setting or within a conference room setting, you breathe in cleaner air into your lungs. And four, you reduce your energy load. And therefore, you have more money in your pocket to make other investments. And that's what we did with Proposition 39. My good friend Tom Steyer, as well as then Secretary of State George Shultz, and I were the co-chairs of this initiative. And as a result, we poured in we are actually pouring in real time, $2.5 billion in our K-12 schools as well as community colleges. And guess what? The $2.5 billion is not even nearly enough. $2.5 billion will perhaps cover maybe a little more than a third, a little under half of the energy efficiency retrofits that we need to do throughout the public schools. But we want to make sure we focus those dollars where? In the low-income schools, poor minority schools. Why do I say that? Because guess what? They burn more emissions because those are older schools. The infrastructure is older, it's much more dilapidated. So it makes sense as opposed to doing so in coastal area schools where it's cooler, you don't have to use as much as energy. So applying an equity lens is absolutely critical, not just because it feels good or if it's morally the right thing to do, but when you democratize your climate change benefits and you allow those at the lowest economic strata to benefit, as a result, you can actually reach your carbon targets. So if only a select few of individuals at the highest economic strata have access to the cleanest, the best, most innovative technologies, we'll never reach our climate change goals. We'll never reach the targets. If only those who live in Beverly Hills or Santa Monica or Palo Alto or other wealthy areas in the country where you may be from, if they're the only ones because they have the financial wherewithal and they're early adopters because they have the financial wherewithal to adopt early, irrespective of the price point of the technology, then we'll actually never meet our goals because clean energy is just a boutique thing, just for the elite few who can afford it. But if you move the policies to make sure, whether it's solar panels, energy efficiency, coupling, rebates for electric vehicles, and I know folks won't be able to buy a beautiful technology like a Tesla because that price point is out, but a Nissan Leaf or any other vehicle that's on the market where the price point will be highly competitive for folks of color who can actually put the rebates together, and that's what we do in our cap and trade program. And in California, we're going to create transportation electrification infrastructure, which means that charging stations will be ubiquitous throughout the state of California, just like gas stations are. On every single corner, we're going to have charging stations all over the neighborhoods, in particularly in low-income neighborhoods. So therefore, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And the whole issue of range anxiety will be a thing of the past. That's how you democratize your climate change policies and make sure everyone has access to the benefits. So it's not of the few and the elite, whether you're on the left or the right or the center. But if you don't move this with policy, with intentionality and purpose, trust me, the market forces by themselves will not correct the inequities that are deeply entrenched and institutionalized, no matter how thoughtful you may be, no matter how good of a heart you may have. It's not going to happen unless you have policymakers, irrespective of their political party, but the reality is not to be partisan. The majority of those individuals who move these types of policies, if not, are Democrats. We can get this done in Washington, D.C. if we didn't have a Congress who is still debating the issue if the earth is still flat or not, you know? And that is the reality. This is not rocket scientists. This is not rocket scientists. Our economy is growing as a result of capital investment, of the market signals that we are sending to create the incubator and an ecosystem for job creation, whether it's manufacturing or other, when it comes to the clean energy space, energy efficiency, and other renewables. In California, by the year 2030, which is around the corner, all investor-owned utilities, as well as MOUs, will have to generate half of their electricity from renewable sources, wind and solar. Now, 50%, there's a couple other states that have 100%, but I got 2 high schools that have a larger population than those 2 respective states, just in my district alone. So when you take it and you scale it up, we're talking about nations, states, in comparison to other parts of the world. To my friends in other parts of the world too, especially the developing nations in the world, I understand where you're coming from completely, especially from the Conference of Parties 21 agreement in Paris, France, just last year in December. Again, at a macro level, we need to democratize our climate change policies, because the reality is those nations who have actually emitted the largest amount of CO2 in the history of humankind has been the United States of America, and now it's China as well as India. That's why these 3 specific nations are absolutely critical to move forward with a program that's proactive in terms of our carbon reduction. And you can actually create jobs, because we've proven it here in California. And you can do it in your other states where you come from. Your state legislative bodies have to take the lead. I truly believe that it's going to be state legislative bodies throughout the country, and even in red states, once they see the economic growth opportunities that exist, aside from old economic legacy industries, that they're going to really think about this twice. But it is you as the entrepreneurs, as the advocates and activists, it is you that are going to be responsible for pushing the envelope in your respective state legislative bodies throughout the country, and also in Washington, D.C., whether it's going to be statutorily through legislation or if it's going to be through executive action, as our president has moved forward. The president, I'm sure, would love to move this statutorily through the Congress, but again, they have made it very difficult for him, and therefore executive action has become necessary. But we know what happens with executive action. It gets tied up in litigation at the U.S., at the U.S. court level, then the appeals court level, Circuit Court of Appeals, and then eventually U.S. Supreme Court. Therefore, the action is taking place in the state legislative bodies. This is possible. It is possible because we're proving it here in the state of California. You can create jobs. You can put people to work. You can lower carbon reductions. You can have cleaner air that our children breathe into the lungs every single day. Because if you start with the premise that all of our children deserve to breathe clean air into their lungs, again, irrespective of who they are or where they come from, their legal status, the language that they speak, whether it's Flint, Michigan, or Oakland, California, or East LA, or East Oakland, or whether it is in Baltimore or south side of Chicago, wherever it may be, and wherever you may come from. This is quite possible because we've done it here in California, and if we've done it here in California, it means it can be duplicated. It can be duplicated. And you may come from other parts where you may say, well, this works in California, but if we modify this here or there, it works better in our state. And there's things that we can learn ourselves. We can learn from ourselves too, from all of you who may have ideas, things that work, in your respective states, in your respective countries as well too. So as innovative as California is, we're also humble enough to know that we can learn from other states, we can learn from other countries, we can learn from other regions as well too. So trust me, we're all ears and we're happy to listen to whatever ideas that you have. We are in a monumental point in our lives. If we're going to create a new economy of tomorrow, a new economy tomorrow by reducing carbon. We've already created that nexus that we can decouple and delink carbon from GDP, put people to work, measure and quantify the real jobs, have healthier outcomes for our children, and have accessibility to electric vehicles, solar panels, energy efficiency to meet our targets. And sometime soon in the near future, and I would predict in the very, very near future, folks who are listening or driving their electric vehicles, who are listening to National Public Radio, NPR, Wait, Don't Tell Me, or whatever show they listen to, Car Talk. Soon we know that we will hit a target point when we see someone driving an electric vehicle and they're listening to mariachi music, or they're listening to hip hop and rap. Once we hear that, we know that we've actually broken that stereotype because we know who those cards are targeted to. They're targeted towards people with high educational attainment who live in certain zip codes. And other folks are targeted at Ford F-150 trucks. And part of it's functionality because of the job that you may have. Understandable. But it's also changing mindsets also too of manufacturers as well as dealers. And we're actually sitting down with dealers and the manufacturers to rewire their thinking and to say, hey, you don't want to leave hundreds of millions of dollars on the table that you can couple on rebates that are specifically for low-income families in the state of California. Why leave that on the table? Because money is money at the end of the day. But once we get that going, we're going to change the way we do things in California, and in the nation, and in the world. I just want to say thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to share, just a few words with each and every one of you. I'm really excited about all of your leadership here in California and wherever you may come from throughout the world, as well as the nation. Together, we're going to do some amazing things, but it takes political leadership. It takes political leadership. All of you are political, whether you agree or not, because if you don't get involved in politics, I will guarantee you one thing, politics is going to get involved with you, whether you like it or not, So with that, God bless each and every one of you. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to share a few words with each and every one of you, and let's get greener every day. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Never follow Kevin De Leon. Thank you very much, Senator De Leon. For those who needed yet another reason to be a big fan of his, he received a coveted Green Hard Hat Award from USGBC California in 2013 for his tireless dedication to environmental issues. Thank you, Senator De Leon, for your thoughts, for your leadership as a climate warrior in the California legislature. All right, so now we have the networking portion of our lunchtime program. We're going to move the afternoon sessions back just a little bit to accommodate some of the conversations here. If you remember, the tables will be grouped generally by region, so we hope that some of the stuff you've heard today has inspired you to come up with solutions and talk about ideas and partnerships within your region. As a reminder, the 4 topics we've put out there to seed the conversation: resilience and climate preparedness, water, homelessness and the affordable housing gap, and sustainable local economies. We've got the afternoon sessions, we've got the closing plenary, and guys, Greenbuild is just getting started, so I hope you guys are fired up. Thank you.